5 days left until American voters pick their president. Early voting numbers simply off the charts. Nearly 79 million ballots have been cast already.
It means no kids in school, no graduations, no weddings, no Thanksgiving, no Christmas, and no 4th of July together. Other than that, you have a wonderful life.
We will start on day one doing the right things. We'll let science drive our decisions. We will deal honestly with the American people. And we'll never, ever, ever quit.
Welcome to Foursquare, the digital video show where politicos get together every week to chop up the news of the week. My name is Eugene Daniels. Joining me virtually, as always, Tim Alberta, Laura Barone Lopez, and Ryan Lizza. Y'all, this is almost it. We're almost done. We are galloping or limping to the finish line. This is the last pre-election day Foursquare that we have.
We've all
How are you guys feeling?
So much since that intro shot.
I know, Eugene, your hair has like quadrupled.
I know. Watching the behind the scenes when I'm like recording in this apartment, just like looking at how my hair has grown has been fun. It's the best thing that's come out of quarantine, if you ask me, I have to say. We're going to start how we always do with a little bit of counter programming. You each have 30 seconds, Ryan, to give people some news they can use that we haven't covered and we won't be covering today. Tim, I'll start with you.
Just today, the Detroit Free Press was reporting on two more white supremacist extremists who were arrested, charged, taken into custody. This is stemming back to an incident late last year, but essentially one of these guys had been running a quote-unquote hate camp, training other militant-minded white supremacists to use firearms and explosives, apparently. And this, of course, comes on the heels of these this group being arrested a couple of weeks ago in the plot to kidnap the governor here, all of which is to say that extremism continues to be on the rise and it could get a hell of a lot worse after next Tuesday.
Yeah. Laura, how about you?
I wrote about the youth vote this week, and so young voters 18 to 29 are turning out in really insane numbers. So it pretty much dispels with the myth that young voters don't turn out. And just to look at one in Texas, a state that Liz is in right now, young voters 18 to 29 have already voted as of earlier this week. They've cast 2/3 as many votes as they did in 2016. So before Election Day, we could very well see them surpass that.
Yeah. Ryan?
You know, just following up on what Tim said and what's going on in Michigan with the Democratic governor. I was in New Mexico the other day, another Democratic governor, also pretty strict COVID preventive measures still in place in New Mexico. And I think what we're seeing in those two states is a harbinger of what Biden will face if he wins. This isn't new. In 1993, the first year of the Clinton administration, 2009, the first year of the Obama administration, we saw some real activity on the right. And this is sort of all turbocharged in the Trump era with a Democrat in the White House rather than a Republican. The kind of extremism on the right is something that is going to be a big story next year if Biden wins.
Tim and Ryan with some very depressing kind of programming, everyone, per usual. Usually how it works out. Tim, what happened to sports? Because it feels like a long time ago when you used to give us some sports.
We'll get back to sports next week.
Maybe. Exactly. More than 74 million people have voted already. By some estimates, that's 1/3 of registered voters in this country. And that's setting us up for an election that's historic in nature for a few reasons. Like Laura said, a lot more young voters have voted in 2016. And in states like North Carolina, we're seeing an uptick in first-time voters as well. You guys, all three of you, there's four of us, three of you have been on the road for Politico. Both Ryan and Laura are still on the road. So I want to start with some dispatches from you guys' travels. Laura, you are in Arizona, a state that, according to polls, is remarkably and sort of shockingly close. When you talk to Democrats and Republicans behind closed doors, do you feel they have the same sense of urgency they are barking about in public? Or is it even worse? Like President Trump was just there last night.
Yeah, no, Arizona isn't used to being a battleground by any means. A lot of the people here on the ground are overwhelmed and very tired by the amount of ads that they're being bombarded with. And, politicians and strategists on the ground in Arizona get talked to from the other battleground states, and the people they know there saying, well, welcome to our world. This is what happens when you become a real battleground. And it's a key state for President Trump because honestly, his pathway is narrow as it is. Without Arizona, I'm not sure he can win re-election. And he came here this week because of the fact that it is so close. Biden's has the advantage right now. He's up about 3.5 points on average across the polls. A lot of people on the ground, a lot of Democrats I spoke to, though, feel that it's much closer, as do Republicans. And so they're just trying to stay laser focused on turning out as many as they can. There was only one Democratic lawmaker that I spoke to here that was a bit bullish on Biden's prospects, saying that he thought that Biden would win by 4 points. I'd be really surprised to see that outcome in Arizona.
Yeah. Tim, you're our Midwest vest-wearing correspondent. You've also covered Republicans for over a decade. How are they feeling behind closed doors about the 2016 Big Three, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, states that you've traveled to?
Not real good. And I would probably put their pessimism in the order of Michigan being farthest out of reach, and then Pennsylvania, and then Wisconsin. I think there's still some thought that Wisconsin is pretty darn competitive, but that it's they're behind the eight ball. They think they could potentially close the gap on election day. It's going to be close. Pennsylvania, Republicans and Democrats have, I think, in a consensus, started to move a little farther away from the president over the last week or so. I think a lot of that is due to district polling, not just statewide polling. There are a number of competitive districts in those three states where you talk to Democratic and Republican consultants where they have to put their money where their mouth is as far as a lot of this internal polling they do in some of these competitive CDs. And districts that Trump won by 5 to 10 points, he's now consistently behind in by 5 to 10 points. And so that's what I base a lot of that off of. The one thing that's consistent on the ground in all three of those places, Eugene, is just the intensity. I know we've talked about this before, and we talked about it a lot on this show, but you just can't overstate. Like a couple of weeks ago, I was in, or maybe it was last week, I'm losing track of time, but I was
Time's a flat circle. Time is a flat circle.
Yeah, it has become a flat circle. I was in Appleton, Wisconsin about a week ago. And there was like a 3-block stretch of Appleton, Wisconsin, where every single house had a yard sign. Every single house for 3 blocks. It was unbelievable. And like you've never seen anything like that before. And I would remind people that Trump has never been a majority politician. He's always won with a high floor, low ceiling approach. And for all of the talk of this sort of supernatural connection that he had with voters in the Rust Belt in 2012, remember, turnout was sharply down in Michigan and Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, Romney won fewer votes in 2016, or excuse me, Trump won fewer votes in 2016 than Romney did in 2012 in the state of Wisconsin. So there's not a lot of margin for error for Trump if turnout spikes the way that we're expecting it to.
Yeah. Ryan, you've been on kind of this like swing state world tour. You're in Texas right now, hopefully heading to Georgia very soon. Democrats haven't won where you are in Texas since Jimmy Carter in 1976. They've been clamoring for decades to win it again. Does it feel like just a pipe dream as it did the last election, 2016? And when you're sitting across from Republicans, what are they telling you? What are they telling you not to put in your stories about how they're feeling?
Well, a lot of Republicans on this trip were telling me to take off my mask. Encountered that quite a bit. I don't know if Tim has encountered that as well, or encountered that on their travels. But it's always interesting to see the red-blue divide on mask wearing. It never ceases to shock me. Couple of thoughts. One, what interesting, amazing that sitting here in Texas that this is a swing state. Democrats have been talking about it forever as a swing state. Hillary Clinton didn't spend a dime here in 2016 and lost it by just 9 points, which was the best performance for a Democrat in a long, long time. The first thing is there's a bit of drama here. It's one of the few swing states where you've actually had local Democrats call out the Biden campaign and say, hey, what about us? You should be spending money here. And so Beto O'Rourke has been leading that charge. I spent a good long time with him on the phone the other day. I was in El Paso, and I forget where he was, but he was somewhere else in the state campaigning. And he was really doing everything he could. He has done everything he could to get he has done everything that he can to get the Biden campaign's attention. And it's caused a little bit of a rift. The Biden campaign has been a little irritated with that. So in a campaign where the Biden campaign has been kind of like boring and not a lot of drama, it's one of the few interesting plots. The second thing that is just wild here is turnout. Turnout has been higher in Texas than any other state in the country. There are 10 million fewer voters residents in Texas than in California, and still there have been more people who have voted so far in Texas. And that's in a state that ranks last when people have studied how difficult it is to vote. So hardest state to vote in, but turnout has been the highest. So pretty wild. And then the third kind of unique thing here, I think, is Biden's soft support among Hispanics, right? For years, we've been saying the reason Texas will go blue is because of these demographic trends. And yet he's doing very, very well with the fabled suburban white voter of this election, but the support and turnout in some of the border counties has not been so great. Kamala Harris on Friday, tomorrow, is actually going down to the border, and probably, I haven't looked this up, but there has not been a Democratic presidential or vice presidential candidate who's campaigned on the Texas border in a very, very long time. So just something is happening here with that kind of turnout. Maybe it's shy Trump voters in the suburbs that are coming around to Trump, or maybe it's an all-out Collar County rebellion against Trump. But something's definitely happening.
Yeah, something that our boss always tells us to do is to look at what the conventional wisdom is and then find the opposite. Are we hearing anything that goes against the conventional wisdom that this is a loss for Trump already? Any of you?
You know, the one thing I would point to, I think the party registration totals are interesting, but sometimes misleading. And so I don't tend to put a ton of stock in registration trends. The one thing that I will note from my travels pretty consistently is that, especially in upscale, traditionally Republican suburbs, a lot of these places pushed 7-8% for Gary Johnson in 2016. And if those voters are coming back into the fold and coming home and voting Trump, then that is a way for him to expand his coalition beyond just trying to juice the white working class vote that might have sat out 2016. So I think the tendency is to view Trump's universe of voters as confined to running up the score among that core blue collar base. But I do think that there is the potential for him to tap into a broader universe of people who didn't vote Hillary in 2016. They're still not comfortable voting for a Democrat. They might not love Trump, but there's not a prominent third party option this time. Gary Johnson was a successful 2-term governor as the Libertarian nominee. And he was running with another successful governor as his VP choice in 2016. I think it's a bit of a different dynamic this time around. So I do think Trump potentially is going to pick up numbers there.
Yeah, I mean, similar to what Tim said real quick, Eugene, is just that in a state like Arizona, one of the subgroups of voters that people are looking at are members of the Church of Latter-day Saints. So do those voters come home to Trump when he performed worse with them than Republicans have in the past? Trump's campaign, seems to think that they will, seems to think that this time around that they'll go for him when last time they voted third party. But that's one of the big questions. And Democrats, Biden is also trying to fight for some of those voters, making appeals on decency to those voters and trying to win some of them over. And there have been a few pop-up groups in Arizona that are calling themselves, Republicans for Biden and tend to be LDS churchgoers.
Can I add one anecdote about that? Because I was
quickly.
I was in Arizona the other day as well. And I've done a lot of driving from Reno all through Nevada, through Arizona, through New Mexico, through Texas. So obviously a lot of rural areas. And, Trump is going to win some of these rural counties by 70, 80, 90%, right? He's trying to squeeze every last vote out of these rural counties. He just dominates the rural Southwest, the rural areas across the country. There was this one stretch of Arizona where it was a really bad accident on the freeway, and I was diverted about 40 miles north, and it was just this kind of backcountry road. Every single sign was Biden-Harris. I did not see a Trump sign for 40 miles in rural Arizona, and it completely blew my mind because it was so different than anywhere else I've been. And when I started
what part of the state was it, Lizzo?
What's that?
What
Arizona. This
no,
is
I know. What part of the state? Do you have a specific name?
Oh gosh, I looked at the county now. No, I don't. The reason was it was Mormon. It was Mormon country. It was an area dominated by the LDS.
It might be White Mountains. To help
I'll look it up. We'll look it up after the show, and I'm completely spacing what it was. But
that would be very helpful for the viewers that are watching the show now.
What's that?
I said that would be very helpful for the viewers that are watching the show now. You looking
I apologize.
Jeez, the guy tries to share some reporting, and you guys jump all over him.
Oh, now Tim's a Ryan protector.
Yeah.
New show we got going on today. Thank you, guys. So we have a very, very special guest in the building today. The one, the only Carrie Budoff-Brown, editor of Politico, making her Foursquare debut. And depending on how everyone behaves, maybe her last time being on the show. Before we get to the real reason that you're here, Carrie, I could not let you come on the show and not play at least one lightning round with us. Are you game?
Oh, hell yeah. Let's do it.
Let's do it. This is a new one called Funny Feeling. I stole it from Tim Alberta's series on the election that he's been doing over the last month. It was actually Ryan's idea, so I give credit where credit is due. Thank you, Ryan. He did it as a joke. He did it as a joke.
Ryan came up with Funny Feelings?
Yeah, no. Tim came up with Funny Feelings.
Just for the show.
Just for the show. Then Ryan was like, oh, let's get it on the show. But he was joking, but I took it seriously.
Best idea you ever had.
Each of you have 30 seconds to tell me what you have a funny feeling about for this election. It can be about turnout, a certain state flipping, dealer's choice, and obviously our guest of honor, Carrie, you are going to go first.
That's kind of pressure,
A lot of pressure on this show.
First, let me thank you for having me on. Thank you. I have officially made it. Special invite. So my funny feeling, I guess, is Florida. I think that Trump will take Florida. That's my funny feeling on the wave of stronger than expected Hispanic vote.
Oh, that's good. That is outside of the.
Is that the genre?
Swinging, huh? Like what? No hedging. No. Wow. Okay.
Like I said, it's a funny feeling. It's a funny feeling I have today. I do. I mean, I think there's interesting stuff going on in Florida. I think it's genuinely going to be surprising, but I guess I wouldn't be surprised. And I have this funny feeling today that Trump at this point in time could pull it out. But, that's just based on what all of y'all write and that I read. So
if we're wrong, if she's wrong, it's on
the whole thing or just Florida?
Just Florida. I feel like Florida is just, could be this like interest, just what's happening, some of the reporting that we have coming out today. I don't know. There's something about it that gives me that funny feeling.
Laura, how about you?
I guess I'm going to put myself out on, I don't know, a limb or something. Normally, I don't like making definitive statements about which way they're going to go. But I think I'm going to say that Arizona will go for Biden. For the first time since 1996, a Democrat will win the state.
That's a big one. I think that's the first time you've ever made a prediction on this show. It only took the whole election
Very
cycle.
Inspired me. No.
Courage is contagious.
Exactly. Ryan?
I mean, this is really going out on a limb, but since it's just a funny feeling, it's not actually a prediction. Is that how it works, Tim?
Yeah, you're on the right track.
It could be a passing funny feeling. You could have a funny feeling in the other direction the next day.
Exactly.
I mean,
Just spit it out already.
Truly.
I think this is going to be a blowout. I think this is going to be. I think on the spectrum of narrow Trump victory to Biden blowout, I think all of the data points towards the high 300s electoral votes for Biden, with the caveat that we all know that Trump still has a path. Some of these swing states are very narrow, but there's sometimes you have these elections. I remember 2002 where there were like 10 swing state Senate seats, or maybe it was 8, and they all went one way. You have these elections where all the swing states tip one way. It's not like 50-50 where they just get divided up. They all go the same way. And if I were, gun to my head, I think we're more likely in a scenario like that.
It got so violent so fast. No one put a gun to Ryan Elizabeth's head. Please. Not on camera, at least. Tim, this is your series, so you go last.
Well, I guess I would sort of piggyback on Liz's point there about when the wave breaks, it tends to wash everything to shore. Like you don't tend to see huge turnout, high intensity elections with very mixed results. It's not to say it can't happen, but it's just unusual. So my sense is that if Biden wins, it's going to happen one of two ways. It's going to be with 298 electoral votes. So he splits 3 of the 6 big battlegrounds. He takes Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, but he loses Florida, North Carolina, Arizona, right? That's I think one very distinct possibility for Biden. And I think the other is the 413 electoral votes. I think that if Biden wins Florida and Arizona, my hunch is that he probably wins Texas and Georgia too. I really do think that this is sort of an all or nothing proposition, just because of the raw turnout game. We saw 137 million people vote in 2016, and there's never any guarantee of turnout going up with each successive election. Matter of fact, turnout went down in both Bill Clinton's reelection and Barack Obama's reelection. But turnout is going to go up significantly this year. And I think it could go up in ways that we've never even wrapped our heads around. It could go from 137 to like 160 or 165. Some people think it could go to 170. If it goes to 170, Biden's going to win 400 electoral votes. I think that's just a reality.
Yeah. What a fun game. Thanks, guys. Remember, everyone, how I mentioned earlier, how tens of millions have already voted early in this election. Well, many of them are mailing in their ballots in states that haven't done it before. That means it's possible we won't know who won on quote unquote election night, which has never honestly been based off the official vote tally in states, and something we have been used to, but is not naturally how the system works. That's why Carrie's here. Every 4 years, news organizations scramble to be one of the first to call a state to our viewers, to our users. That is likely going to look different this year. So who better to tell you what to expect from us at Politico than CBB herself? Carrie, I'm going to start. A hard but pretty basic question. How is Politico viewing calling states this year, and is it different from the years past?
No, we have very clear guidelines here where and a very clear process that we have used, multiple times through multiple primary nights, going back to elections past, where we have experts in-house like Steve Shepard and Scott Bland, and they're talking with folks, Charlie Matessian, others. We're all talking amongst ourselves, looking at the data. But when it comes to making a call, we have very clear guidelines where we need to see 3 networks making a call on a state, or the AP calls something. We don't have the resources here at Politico to sort of go out there. We would never, we just don't have that ability, and we have to rely on the networks or the AP. And we had a meeting among senior editors the other day to sort of hammer out and finalize that protocol, which is, and my instructions to the team was, there is no value in getting out ahead of where it is. And just because that is not where Politico makes its mark, just isn't. So there's no benefit to us to getting out ahead of something if we're not comfortable. And in fact, we have a line that we hold, and it's frankly better in this environment to be more conservative than more liberal. And there's just no benefit. I mean, because the fact is we're never going to call a race before everybody else. And at that point, we are looking to see how the networks and the AP is calling it, and we will make our own decision, when to do it, how to do it, but it's pretty clear. And at the end of the day, the call on who wins the presidency, that won't be made by anybody else but me, in conjunction with the editors. Obviously, it could just be very clear, and it's very easy. In a case where it's murky, nobody gets out ahead of where the publication should be and will be, and that ultimately rests with me. And so, that's how we do it. And I just don't see any benefit to sort of getting out ahead of things and screwing it up. There's no benefit to us on that. And there's very little, upside to doing it first, frankly. So that's it. And it's very simple. And we're just going to go by the guidelines, and we're going to stick to it. And we're going to, keep our cool heads about us.
Carrie, you before you were the top editor, you were a reporter who covered many presidential campaigns. So I'm curious, what do you think about this election in particular compared to past ones, and the pressure that is on a newsroom like Politico to get this right? I mean, we always want to get it right, but I mean, like, the factors at play this time versus prior years.
No, absolutely, Laura. It's night and day. I covered the Obama campaign in 2008 on the road. It's nothing like what we're experiencing now. That was child's play practically compared to this environment that we're in. And yeah, I mean, you guys have heard me for months, if not years, talking about this moment. I have said, if we're surprised, somehow we didn't do our jobs beforehand. And so this is the culmination of years of work that this team has done to look at all the angles and to test your assumptions and to surface reporting that you think says something about the race. I am extraordinarily proud of what we have done to unearth that and narrate a story and look at all the angles. And so that's super high pressure. I mean, we're all holding on to this fact. We could have this big surprise. The data, once again, shows something entirely different, to the point that Tim and Ryan were making earlier, and you, Laura, on Arizona. Like, we were seeing things with our own two eyes. We're matching it up with data. We know it's different. There was a great piece that Tim wrote this week, his funny feelings, 16 data points about why 2016, this is not 2016. It's hard to look at that and think, read that. It's different. It's a different environment. So yeah, I am both confident and obviously a bit nervous about, heading into Tuesday and where we end up, and did this newsroom, do everything it could to look at this in a 360 way and capture, what is not only, happening in the swing states, but beyond. And, but here we are. Let's just move forward and see what happens.
Carrie, sorry, I didn't know if it was Ryan's turn.
It's Tim's turn.
You expertly covered the Obama administration, and obviously that included the former then Vice President Joe Biden. And I've got this theory that if Biden wins the presidency, and if you stuck truth serum in his arm, he'd tell you that he'd prefer to have a 51-49 Republican Senate so that he wouldn't have the left breathing down his neck from day one. How do you see that, knowing Biden the way that you do, and knowing his style and his view of politics and how you get things done in Washington? How do you view a Biden presidency in either of those scenarios, either with a unified Democratic government or having divided government on Capitol Hill?
I mean, maybe if you asked me that question 8 or 10 years ago, I might have said he would have wanted a divided government. I don't think I don't think he'll be able to do anything under that scenario. And I think he would rather have, given what we saw about the first 2 years of the Obama administration, right? Obama was only ever able to get what he wanted to get done in a big way when he had unified control. It lost him control, obviously, of the Senate and the House. But he never would have done the things that he did that have defined his legacy, but for having Democrats in charge. And I just think in this environment today, it's different than it was before, where we would talk about 2014 or 2012 when President Obama was running for re-election and the value of having divided government. I just think in this environment, divided government seems like paralysis. We all, we sort of all know what, the posture that Republicans are going to take in a world where Biden's president. And it's very hard to see how, they work hand in hand to pass big things. It's going to be extraordinarily difficult with Democrats. The honeymoon ends as soon or, as he would be declared the winner. I mean, it's crazy to think about. Like he doesn't have 1 minute of rest. We're going to, so I would argue that he wants Democrats in charge because he can't do anything short of that.
Carrie, just to go back to election night, and we have social media guidelines at Politico. Actually, now that I think about it,
you need to abide by it too. That's all I can say. And all y'all watching out there, you all need to abide by it too.
You have a high percentage of people who pop off on Twitter that come right up to the line of those social media guidelines right here, I think.
It's true. That's fair. Absolutely.
And so no, but I was. What is the guidance for the newsroom about social media? And okay, hey, ABC just called Arizona for Biden. How should the newsroom act on social media? What are the rules here?
You should probably know this already, Ryan. But
well, I mean specifically with calls, because if Tim or Laura or Eugene or me are seeing something that is outside of our guidelines, should we be sharing that or not?
Yeah, so we have actually drafted a note that we are going to be sending to the newsroom early next week that before Tuesday to sort of walk through those scenarios with guidance about, holding your fire. Listen, think before you tweet, right? There's no benefit to sort of getting out ahead of where the story is, given the stakes, given how you all are big followings on social media. It's a responsibility that you have, right? And particularly around declaring winners or sort of passing on things like that, we should be careful. You all have it's all personal accounts, but you represent Politico, and there are guidelines, and these stakes are high, and the world will go on if you don't do that tweet.
Never tweet. That's the
turn to Olivia and say, Olivia, this is happening instead of your Twitter feed.
Yeah, just when in doubt, put up another glam shot from your GQ spread.
His GQ Brad Pitt spread from the White Sands. Indeed. You guys can find this on the internet. It's not hard to find. Exactly. Carrie, thank you so much. You're very busy. Not many editors would do this and be pestered with questions by her own employees. So thank you very much for coming on.
I expect multiple invitations from here on out, Eugene.
Oh, for sure. You can replace any one of them. Pick a person and they're gone.
Maybe she can replace you, dude. Do you think about that?
She can have it. If she wants, she can have it. If she wants, she can have it.
I don't think anyone could do Eugene's job. So
there's only one.
Oh my God, guys, keep going.
This is banquet now. All the brown nose.
I love it. It's perfect. That's what the show's going to turn into. Carrie, thanks again.
Thank you for that.
So this is the last show we will have with all of you before November 3rd. So all of the talking and chatting and analyzing and reporting will soon switch over to, as we've been talking about, what the results of the election are. So I want to give my three favorite nerds one last chance to say whatever they wanted to about the election, answer any question, and take it wherever they wanted without my prodding. I'm really scared about this. This is probably a mistake. What have you guys learned about us as a country, about how this election is going to turn out? Ryan, I'm going to start with you. Your last word after covering this for 2 years.
In the immortal words of George W. Bush at the 2017 inaugural, that was some weird shit.
Mm-hmm. And that's it. Oh my God,
that's so fast.
That's the shortest time.
Lopez. It was Navajo County Laura.
He's already looked.
I get the answers. I get results.
That's true. That's how you got to do it. That was the shortest answer I've ever gotten from my Alyssa. Thank you, Ryan. Tim, how about you?
Look, I don't know if you want me to answer this, honestly.
This is going to be a long one, I can tell.
No, it's actually not. Yeah, it's just dark, and you guys don't like it when I get dark. But
let's get dark.
I like that.
I think this country is divided in ways that it has never been divided, at least in the post-Civil War era. I think the information baseline is so different for different groups of people that we're no longer working off of the same information, off of the same intelligence. We can't agree on the same basic foundational facts anymore, which is a huge problem for an informed democracy. You have just deep and potentially irreparable schisms, fault lines, cultural and religious and ethnic and demographic and geographic, even setting aside just the raw politics of the day. And I actually am encouraged, if I'm only encouraged by one thing, it's that I think that the one thing we've all learned is that voters probably aren't as ideologically charged as we maybe thought they were, at least as far as the ideas themselves and the policies. I don't think that the political divide on paper is insurmountable, but I do worry about the cultural divide. I do worry about a lost sense of community, and I do worry about people turning inward. I think in many ways the COVID pandemic has exacerbated some of the worst trends in American life as far as the diminishing of physical community that people have with one another, and everything sort of getting digital and virtual. If you can't see and touch and talk to people who feel very differently about things than you do, then it's really hard to sort of rebuild some of this trust and some of this continuity that we need as a society. And all of that is to say that whoever wins this election, I don't see it getting any better. I actually think it's probably going to get a lot worse before it has the chance to get any better.
Yeah. That was sad, but poignant. Laura, my friend, you get the last word here.
Yeah, this has been, as we all have talked about, a difficult election cycle for all Americans, and also because, not just because of how divided, as Tim is saying, the country is, which you really see when you go out on the trail and you talk to these voters, how different their viewpoints are and how they feel so extremely on each side, and how they don't trust, the other party at all, which is just frankly stunning compared to prior years. And so I am looking forward to the election cycle being over, but I guess I would offer two things to our viewers and to our readers, which is, yes, November 3rd is literally right around the corner, but we may not know, as we've all highlighted, the results on election night. So be prepared. So be ready to wait. And don't be fooled by early victory speeches. And also, kind of as Tim said, there's still going to be a lot that the country has to go through. The pandemic is not over, and that is going to be difficult. And how the government ends up will be a key story in determining what kind of relief is given to Americans in terms of stimulus relief, which may not even happen. And that's something that we didn't talk about much this show, but is not going to probably happen until after the election. So I think just to our viewers, we're almost there, but be prepared for what comes next, and for potentially it to be a long week or a long 2 weeks, depending on how close it is or isn't.
And wait, Eugene, just because I add one.
No,
I knew this was coming. I knew this was coming.
Let the man speak.
The final thought: we have been through worse. As bad as it looks, and as divided as it seems, we've been through worse. We've been through worse as recently as the 1960s by a lot of measures. So, Tim, don't despair.
Oh, I want to give you guys all a hug.
Hard disagree with the 1960s comparison. Make it offline.
Thank you guys, you three. This has been a lot of fun. We started this months ago on this journey of Foursquare. It's not ending, but we got to almost to the finish line. For you viewers, usually this is when I say you can watch us every single week, but next Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, we will be giving you live coverage of the election and where it stands. There will be some special guests, our colleagues, and hopefully some answers for you. And it will be done as only Politico can.